You're listening to Now I've Heard Everything, conversations with the icons of our time.
You cannot be serious, so it's just become infamous. And when people come up to me, more often than not, a lot of times they'll come up and say hello, but a lot of other times they'll come up and say the very phrase.
Tennis superstar John McEnroe. Today on Now I've Heard Everything, I'm Bill Thompson. As this year's Wimbledon championships get underway, let's recall one of the greatest professional tennis players of our time. John McEnroe won 77 career singles titles, including 3 at Wimbledon. And he won 77 doubles titles, including 5 at Wimbledon. He is in fact the only male tennis player ever to win more than 70 titles in both categories. Now, it was at Wimbledon in 1981 that McEnroe, during a confrontation with an umpire, came up with what turned out to be his signature phrase.
Look, you can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious! That ball was on the line!
As the years went on, McEnroe embraced and adopted that saying as his own. He even called his 2002 memoir, You Cannot Be Serious. Now, in that book, he talked about his childhood, his career, and his 8-year marriage to actress Tatum O'Neal, which ended in a very bitter 1994 divorce. And we talked about all of that when I interviewed him for his book. So here now, from 2002, John McEnroe.
Is this title, I gather, was meant to be half serious, half funny?
Well, it's sort of the way I look at things in general, that you don't want to take myself too seriously, but at the same time, I'd like to do something a little bit more serious in the future. I mean, after all, I've been able to do something that I wouldn't even call a job for a living, which is to play tennis. So that's been great fun in a lot of ways. It stems from a match I played in 1981, where I played a first-round match at Wimbledon, where things were getting a little heated and things were discussed, shall we say, between myself and the umpire, and it led to me throwing out a couple of outbursts, shall we say, and one of them was you cannot be serious. So it's just become infamous and sort of funny in the same way. And when people come up to me, more often than not, a lot of times they'll come up and say hello, but a lot of other times they'll come up and say the very phrase. So it's apropos in the sense that it's something people remember, but also it's sort of the way I live my life, which is not taking myself too seriously.
Now, how is it that I'm sitting here interviewing tennis superstar John McEnroe and not former basketball star John McEnroe?
It was a sport that I loved growing up. I thought I was a white guy that could jump a little bit in high school, but I'm sure looking back I made the right decision. Let's put it that way. It was a game where I loved the team aspect of the game. I think it's a great game. I grew to about, on a good day, I'd like to say 6 feet tall. I know John Stockton plays great basketball, but it's pretty tough for those guys that height. And it was something, if there is a God up there, I suspect somewhere lurking, although I don't always understand what's going on or what he's trying to accomplish. There is someone up there, and for whatever reason, that person wanted me to play tennis. And it was just something where I was always better at tennis than I was the other sports.
But I'm guessing that if somebody, when you were a kid, had handed you a list of possible occupations you could be when you grew up, professional tennis player probably would not have been high on the list.
Not at the top of the list in sports, admittedly. I went to Madison Square Garden a lot as a kid in New York. My father took me there to see the hockey games and the basketball games the Knicks play, and I played football and I played baseball, and you name it, I'd be out there. But the thing was that when I was about 8 and a half, my parents moved to a part of Queens in Douglaston. Actually, my mom moved to 4 different locations in Douglaston while I grew up, once even next door. But that's another story. And we moved to about a block and a half away from a tennis club. And there was 2 choices, tennis or swimming. I wasn't into swimming. So when my friends got bored of me, or they got bored of playing the sports that I loved to participate in, then I'd head down to the courts and hit against the backboard. And soon afterwards, because my parents didn't know, they started to play tennis when I did. It led to some of the pros, the local pro there, saying to my parents, hey, listen, this guy can play. maybe you should send him somewhere else. I mean, I'm okay, but if you want some real good lessons and some inspiration, there's this club out a little further out in Long Island. And it was a fortunate set of circumstances because I ran into people such as Harry Hopman, who's was a great Davis Cup captain from Australia, and worked with the greats of the tennis world, the Titans, Rod Laver, Ken Rosewall, Lou Hode, John Newcomb, you name it. Down the list, he worked with them, and he happened to have a falling out with the Australian Federation and landed 15, 20 minutes from my home. I had also happened to be a place where the person who taught me to play, the style of play, which I think is unusual, you don't see a lot in the sport of tennis, taking the ball early on the rise, someone was there, Tony Palafox, who was a great Davis Cup player from Mexico, won Wimbledon doubles, among other things. And so he was the head pro there. There was guys by the name of, people may have heard, Vitas Gerulaitis, God rest his soul, who I still miss 8 years later, but was the man there when I got there. Peter Fleming, who I ended up playing doubles with and had a great friendship and partnership with. So it just led to sort of, I don't want to say falling into it, but when I got to Wimbledon when I was 18, I was the #1 junior player in the world, but I was sent over there to play the juniors, not the main event. And because I had some free time and had enough I had played a couple matches due to some other people I knew in the New York area professionally. I got into the qualifying, and long story short, it suddenly dawned on me as I was qualifying and subsequently getting to the semifinals that either I was a whole lot better than I realized, or these guys were a whole lot worse. And it was a combination, I think.
You know, it is sad. I mean, given the level of stardom that you reach with your ability, more titles than anybody else in the game, that you've been saddled with a all right, it occurred to me while I was preparing for this interview, I've been in radio for 30 years. During those 30 years, I've gotten angry on the job. I've shouted things. I've said naughty things. I've broken things. I've thrown things. I've had things thrown at me.
Good to hear.
And nobody has yet labeled me a bad boy. I mean, what did you do that millions of other people don't do on a daily basis?
I think it was more the sport than anything else, which is something that I tried to change. The fact that tennis was still considered an upper class, yuppie sport, I think had a great deal to do with the perception that was out there. I mean, I always say, if you put a microphone on the middle of the football field, the 50-yard line, when these guys are hitting each other, somehow I get the feeling they're not saying, "How are you?" The hockey rink, they're out in the baseball field. The umpires are out there with the umpires, the managers, and they're going at it with each other, and people love it. But I think if they heard exactly what was said, they might not be quite so appreciative. And one of my points of irritation was the fact that the microphones were so close on the tennis court. Hey, at least treat us like these other sports. We're not pretending that things aren't said that shouldn't be said, perhaps. There are kids watching. We're not pretending that, or I'm not pretending that there weren't times where I went overboard and made an ass out of myself. But at the same time, we should be treated a little bit more fairly. But maybe because the game was just coming into its own in a sense. I mean, I will add, I thought I came in at the best time I could have possibly come into the sport, so I'm thankful for that. There was a cast of characters already, whether it was the aura that Borg brought to the game. Jimmy Connors was so intense, the intensest player I ever saw on a tennis court. My buddy Vitas Gerulaitis, Vilas, with the long hair and the South American. So it seemed everywhere I turned there was character and personality, clearly what you need in an individual sport. So I wouldn't have had it any other way, even though there was some criticism.
But also when thousands of dollars are at stake, based on if a little ball goes on one side or another of a line just a couple inches wide, yeah, you're going to get tense.
You should be my PR man before. Yes, and the thing is that what I had a problem was that these guys are so convinced when I knew they hadn't seen the ball that they said they did. I would have been much better off. Listen, I didn't see it. I mean, now, of course, you can see it even more obviously, but this ball's being hit 120, 130 miles an hour, you have a split second to pick it up. It's tough enough when you've been doing it all your life, playing the sport of tennis, and you almost know where it's going to be pretty much when it's hit to within a certain amount of a few feet or few inches. But to really see the ball, this is an awful tough job. I mean, you got to be nuts to want to be an umpire, right? But nonetheless, I suppose that when I look back, I look at it as, well, yes, people are going to remember that part of it, and that's okay. But I think that as time has passed, they remember that I accomplished quite a bit when I went out there and played the singles and doubles titles you referred to. The fact that I represented my country in Davis Cup, I think, has been an important positive for me. 99 out of 100 people have something nice to say. Hey, I loved it when you played tennis. You're the reason I watch tennis. Thank you for not going to South Africa
Yes.
when you offered $1 million for one day. Those are very gratifying comments to hear, and it makes me feel proud of what I accomplished when I was out there. And I think that people, as you pointed out so well, we all make these mistakes every day. And I think the key is clearly that I did, obviously, but at the same time, I think people have recognized that perhaps from seeing me for the past 25 years, hopefully there's a little bit of maturity, being a father, going through personal difficulties as well as joys, something that a lot of people can relate to. And this is something where they've grown up, shall we say, more accustomed to me, but at the same time, they've seen a side with the commentary work, perhaps, that's given me an opportunity to show a side of my personality that I wasn't successful at showing when I was playing, which is a little bit of hopefully what they'll read in the book if they read it, is self-deprecation and not taking myself too seriously and poking a little fun, but while at the same time showing an expertise.
I think those 10-10-2-20 commercials are quite effective in that.
Well, that was great. You know, that commercial with Piazza, he came in and he wanted to go crazy. And I think that's funny. You know, that way it was originally set up so that I would go crazy, of course. And he said he wanted to do it.
20 minutes for 99 cents?
Is that a good deal?
What? You can't be serious! It's a great deal!
I like this guy.
Oh, yeah,
I
it
think
works beautifully.
It works much better the way it is.
Now, we've only got a moment or so left, but I wanted to ask you, there are parts of this book that are very personal. Was it hard for you to decide how much you wanted to talk about your personal life?
There's no question. There's obviously, as for starters, with my ex-wife, I have 3 beautiful kids that are now 16, 14, and 11. So every word I put in that book, I thought about carefully, how I presented it. Hopefully that they would see. I haven't been able to get them to read it, but that's another issue. But that they would see that I hopefully took responsibility and handled this difficulty with some dignity. And also that everything that was written about my ex-wife has already been out there. I mean, some of the things between Tatum and myself are things that some of the things that are going to be situations or things that happen that people aren't going to know about. But there's nothing that's been out there since the last 10 years we've been together that hasn't already been out there. So I'm hoping that people see that I handled it with as much dignity as possible. I'd like to think I did.
John McEnroe is 65 now. He's a TV commentator, and he still plays in and wins senior tournaments. Now you can get your copy of You Cannot Be Serious by John McEnroe by tapping the link in our show notes or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. Heardeverything.com is where you can also hear my 1992 interview with another tennis great, Tracy Austin.
I'm on the tennis court. I'm there to win. I don't care about the crowd. And I think when you play your best tennis is when you're oblivious. You don't even know that the crowd's there. You're out there to win a tennis match and to try to stay as calm as you can and to block that out and just stay focused.
And my 2002 interview with another man who's had a few famous temper tantrums, basketball coach Bobby Knight.
One time I threw a chair. I mean, I see that every other night on television. And how many coaches have thrown a coat, thrown a water bucket, thrown ice, but that one thing gets repeated time and time again. Why? I honestly don't know.
And of course, we post new episodes of Now We've Heard Everything every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, as we prepare for the July 4th holiday, we'll go back to my 1998 interview with renowned historian Eric Foner.
Our feeling that we are the preeminent exemplars of freedom comes from the American Revolution, which created a nation which declared itself to be an asylum for liberty for the whole of mankind.
That's next time on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.